Small spaces do not usually feel small because they are small. More often, they feel small because too many things are competing for your attention at once. A chair slowly turns into a place for clothes. The bit by the door becomes somewhere to drop bags. The kitchen counter starts holding things that have nothing to do with the kitchen. None of this looks especially serious in the moment, but after a while, the room begins to feel tighter than it really is, even if there is enough space there on paper. That is why some homes feel lighter than others, even when they are not actually much bigger. Quite often the difference is not square footage at all. It is what the room is being asked to carry, and how many small, unfinished decisions are left out in the open. Japanese-inspired home habits can be useful here, not because they are decorative or idealized, but because many of them are built around lowering friction. They make it easier for a room to return to a calmer state, and when that return becomes easier, the space tends to feel bigger than it is. The first habit is to treat the entrance as a reset point, not a dumping ground. In a smaller home, the entrance quietly sets the tone for everything else. If shoes, coats, bags, post, parcels, and loose bits all gather there, the house begins with visual noise. You step inside, and before you have properly arrived, your brain is already being asked to deal with clutter. A calmer way to handle it is to give that area a very small and clear job. Shoes are limited. Bags go in one place. Keys go in one place. Post does not sit there for 3 days pretending it is only temporary. The aim is not some perfect hallway. It is simply to make coming home feel like coming home, rather than walking straight into another unfinished task. The second habit is to keep the floor clear on purpose. It sounds simple, maybe too simple, but it changes the feel of a room more than most people expect. Floors collect things because they seem convenient. A box can stay there for now. A basket can wait there until later. Laundry can sit there until tonight. But the moment the floor starts acting as storage, the room begins to close in. A clear floor gives the eye a bit of relief. It also makes cleaning easier, moving around easier, and tidying less mentally tiring. In a small home, that matters more than people think. The easier it is for a room to return to order, the less background chaos it tends to build up. The third habit is to give everyday objects a shallow home, not a deep one. A surprising amount of clutter comes from things being stored in ways that are technically tidy, but annoying to use. They are at the back of a cupboard. They are underneath 3 other things. They are in a drawer that already feels slightly irritating to open. So in real life, people stop putting them away properly and leave them out instead. That is not a character flaw. It is friction. If the scissors, the charger, the cleaning cloths, or the tea towels are awkward to put back, they will end up living on the nearest surface. A better system is often much less dramatic than people imagine. Shallow shelves, small trays, simple dividers, storage that is easy to reach, easy to see, and easy to reset. When the final step is straightforward, it happens more often without effort. The fourth habit is to reduce visible storage, even if the amount of storage stays exactly the same. This is one of the most helpful shifts in a small space. When everything is visible, everything asks to be noticed. Open shelving can look lovely in moderation, but too much of it makes a room feel busy very quickly. Your eyes keep moving. Your attention keeps catching. Even useful objects start to feel noisy when there are too many of them on display. Japanese interiors are often described as calm, and part of that comes from restraint in what remains visible. Not emptiness for the sake of emptiness, just selectivity. Closed cupboards, simple boxes, baskets, cleaner surfaces. These help because they reduce the amount of visual information your brain has to keep taking in. The fifth habit is to let empty space stay empty. This is harder than it sounds because empty space has a way of looking available. A blank corner starts to feel as though it should hold something. A rack, a stool, a basket, a small shelf, a decorative object that seemed useful when you bought it. Even a clear bit of counter can start to look like wasted space. But one of the quieter ideas, often linked with Japanese design, is the value of the space between things. Not every gap needs to be filled. Sometimes the gap is what allows the room to breathe. In a small home, empty space is not a failure to make use of the room. It is part of what makes the room usable. It gives you space to move. It lowers visual pressure. It helps what is left feel chosen rather than crowded together by default. The sixth habit is to store by frequency, not only by category. People often organize in ways that make perfect sense in theory, but do not quite match daily life. All the stationery goes together. All the cables go together. All the cleaning products go together. That sounds tidy, and sometimes it is. But everyday life is not really organized by categories. It is organized by repeated actions. The mug you use every morning should not be hidden behind the nicer set you use twice a year. The charger you reach for every evening should not be buried in a box of old wires and forgotten adapters. Things you use often should live in the easiest places. Things you rarely touch can take the awkward spots. That matters because effort shapes behavior. When the right object is close to the moment you need it, life runs more smoothly. When every small action involves opening, shifting, reaching, and searching, people naturally start leaving things out. Then the room fills up with a kind of low-level disorder that is easy to ignore at first and tiring over time. The seventh habit is to put limits on surfaces rather than vague hopes. A lot of people tell themselves they want clearer counters, clearer tables, clearer shelves. But clearer is not a real rule. It is just a wish. A limit works better. A tray for daily essentials. 1 or 2 things on the bedside table, not 7. A dining table that is used for meals, not permanent storage with occasional eating squeezed around it. This is not about being strict for the sake of it. It is about making it obvious when a space has gone from useful to overloaded. Limits reduce decision fatigue. You no longer have to keep negotiating with yourself about whether one more thing can stay there. The boundary is already there. And in a small home, surfaces matter a great deal. Once they start looking crowded, the whole room starts feeling crowded. The 8th habit is to use vertical space carefully, not aggressively. When people begin to run out of room, the instinct is often to add more. More hooks, more shelves, more rails, more organizers. Sometimes that genuinely helps, but sometimes it just pushes the clutter upwards and spreads it around the room at eye level. Used well, vertical storage frees the floor and keeps important things within reach. Used badly, it makes the room feel like a storage plan pinned to every wall. What helps is being selective. Use vertical space for stable, repeating needs. Coats near the entrance, pans near the cooker, towels in the bathroom, books in one clear area. Try not to fill every wall simply because you can. A small space feels larger when vertical storage solves problems quietly, not when it announces itself from every direction. The 9th habit is to do a small evening reset instead of waiting for a major tidy-up. This is often the habit that keeps the rest in place. In many homes, disorder does not build because nobody ever tidies. It builds because too many small things get left for later. Later becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes the weekend. Then, by the time you look at it properly, the reset feels too big, so it gets delayed again. A short evening reset works differently. Dishes done, surfaces cleared, cushions put back. Entrance reset. A few things returned to where they belong. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to stop the room carrying today's unfinished mess into tomorrow. There is a psychological reason this helps. Visible disorder leaves a trace. You may not actively think about the shoes by the door or the pile on the counter every minute, but part of your attention still registers them. They keep small loops open in the background. Closing those loops at the end of the day gives the room and your mind a lighter starting point in the morning. And the 10th habit is to own for the space you really have, not the life you vaguely imagine. This is often one of the quietest pressures in a small home. Clothes for versions of yourself that do not quite exist. Kitchen tools for meals you do not really cook. Decorative items bought because they looked right in a larger, calmer space than the one you actually live in. Extra storage bought to manage the problem created by keeping too much in the first place. A practical Japanese-inspired approach here is not extreme minimalism. It is fit. Does this belong in the reality of this home? Does it support the way life is actually lived here? Or is it simply asking the room to carry more than it needs to? Small spaces become easier when your belongings match the space. Honestly. Not perfectly. Just honestly. And that is usually what makes a room feel bigger in the end. Not clever tricks. Not pretending you should be able to live with almost nothing. Not believing one determined afternoon of tidying will fix everything for good. What tends to work is quieter than that. A clear entrance, a clear floor, storage that is easy to use, less on show, a bit of empty space left alone. Everyday objects stored where everyday life actually happens. Small resets before mess hardens into friction. These habits seem modest because they are modest. But modest habits are often the ones that last. They do not ask for a burst of motivation. They do not require you to become a different person. They simply make the calmer choice easier to repeat. And once that begins to happen, a small home stops feeling like something you are constantly trying to manage. It starts to feel enough.